college, and I am an ACRE student who has been working on an ACRE about the brilliance of Charles James. So who is Charles James? He was a well-known American courtier in the 1950s through the 1960s. He's mostly recognized for his extravagant designs using draping and sculpting techniques that are still questioned and wondered about by designers till this day. And he also became a big influence for some well-known artists today, such as Christian Dior and Balenciaga, as well as some older designers as well, like Elsa Schiaparelli. And due to this, he made many garments for some of the world's most notorious women in the fashion realm. So what I planned. So Dr. Burdett is my mentor, and she and I created a James Infanta gown and are planning to recreate his pink four-leaf clover gown. The Infanta has been made to fit me and was constructed by me along with some help from Dr. Burdett, of course. As for the four-leaf clover gown, I would be working alongside Dr. Burdett more closely. I also did some research on James designs and will be designing my own Charles James inspired line, and I will show that to you shortly. So this is the original Infanta gown, and it was designed in 1952 for Samuel Winston, which was a partner with Charles James, but that only lasted 1 year. So the skirt has black lace over white taffeta, and it is, correction. The outer bodice is black lace over white taffeta, fitted with a stiffened peplum. So, this is the peplum, and it is seamed together to the waist. And the skirt is waltz length and has layers of black and white netting over a flared, narrow black silk underskirt that is stiffened out with wide horsehair braid to keep that flare. And of course, there is a large black satin skirt, not a skirt, a bow, at the center front skirt for decoration. So James research, in order to produce an accurate replica of the Infanta, we needed a lot more information than we originally thought. We had some images, but needed way, way more. So we had to contact the curator at the Ohio State University, which is where the original Infanta gown is currently residing. And we also had to ask for exact measurements of the gown. After we received more photos and received more measurements, we realized that each part of the garment had to be extremely accurate in measurements, otherwise the dress would not have been a copy. And on top of that, James was very, very, very meticulous when it came to fitting his garments to his clients. We knew that we couldn't make an exact replica after we saw some of the techniques that he used through the pictures, but we still worked our way around it, and we made a pretty good replica, I would say. So this is the completed version of the gown we made. That is me wearing the gown because it was designed to fit me, so yeah. And this gown had a lot more layers than what the eye can see. From an inner bodice, which is the bodice that's underneath the outer bodice, if you did not know. And it has steel boning and padding to create that shape and support for the upper bust area. And there's also an inner skirt under all that tulle and netting with a stiff interfacing layer that keeps the outer skirt flared out. So Dr. Burdett and I completed this gown, and we are very pleased with the outcome. And even though it is not an exact replica of the original, it is a very closely resembled gown copy, yes. So what I've learned, so working with Dr. Burdett, I've learned a lot of things that will definitely help me in the long run in my fashion career. So that is very, very relieving. And I am very proud to know that I can say that. So some things that I've learned was how to pad a dress form. So in the upper left corner, you could see that that is the dress form that I padded with cotton padding to create more of a shape that resembles my body because the dress form was too small. And I also learned how to drape and manipulate the fabrics on my dress forms to get it to move and stay the way I wanted it to stay. So that was pretty cool. I also learned how to create and finalize patterns for garments, which is actually very, very useful considering that from experience, it's actually really hard to make a garment without at first making a pattern for it. I also learned how to gather tulle. So as you can see in the bottom left corner, that is me gathering tulle by hand after running it all through the machine. And then on the top right, that is me applying that gathered tulle to the outer skirt of the dress. Aside from that, I also learned various stitches that you could perform on the sewing machine and by hand. Some of those stitches are just the serpentine stitch, the whip stitch, stab stitch, and prick stitch, and et cetera, et cetera. But my sewing skills have definitely improved, and that is a big flex in my opinion. So these are some of the Charles James bodices that I used as a reference to create my line. There's way more, but these are just a little handful of the ones that I could find. So my line was indeed inspired by James, and I used style lines and fabrics that James would have used in his bodices and skirts. But I also did use the Spring Summer 2010 Victor and Rolf collection as an inspiration for my line. And the pictures in the far right are the ones that I use the most for reference. I also used a Jean-Baptiste Valli Fall 2020 Haute Couture collection because it also contained a lot of tulle and a lot of flair like James designs. But also, of course, it wouldn't have been my Charles James inspired line if I didn't add my own creative flair to make the garments my own and update the looks. So this is the first set of my line. As you can see, I didn't just keep it to dresses and skirts. I mixed it up with rompers and jumpsuits and pants because your girl isn't really that big on dresses. So yeah. The second line that continued on is the rest. Once again, rompers and jumpsuits and such. No rompers actually, just jumpsuits and dresses, of course. And this is my line. Hopefully one day I can make these into a reality. That would be great. So I definitely faced some obstacles while doing this ACRE, and probably the major obstacle I faced was the COVID lockdown. The pandemic prevented me and my mentor from visiting a couple of museums we wanted to see to examine the garments in person. But fortunately, Dr. Burdett had already like a good collection of photographs of the garments, and she also had kept in contact with the curator, who was nice enough to help us find missing measurements and get additional photos. And although it could not have been helped, during the first virtual part of the ACRE, since it was virtual and most of this project consisted of physical manual labor, we lost about 4 weeks because it was just not the same. We couldn't exactly work as fast as we wanted to because it was just way too difficult to do it through a screen. But the challenge was overcome when the school finally gave me permission for campus housing and I was able to meet with my mentor in person. But aside from that, I also had a bit of a challenge getting a new sewing machine because my old one did break. And since the entire world was shut down, it was really hard to get a new sewing machine, but I got one, thank you to Let Go. And also the sewing studio helped with that too on campus. So what I liked about the project was the opportunity to gain more knowledge on dressmaking. I would have never have been able to like put this dress together if I didn't have the gain any knowledge before doing it. It definitely made me feel like a real courtier and definitely made me feel more prepared for my major, which is fashion design. So, duh. But what I didn't enjoy about this project was how time consuming it became because the work eventually became tedious. But great things do take time, and I am just very pleased with the outcome. So what's left to do is that we have to complete the 4-leaf clover gown, which will, as I said, be completed in the second session of fall. We already have the boned and padded underbodice done and the innermost slip layer. And we, of course, we have photos taken by Dr. Burdett on her past research trip as a reference. So my overall ACRE experience was mostly enjoyable. It did involve a lot of work and research, but it's an ACRE project. Of course, I kind of knew what I signed up for when I agreed to it, but I definitely ended up with more knowledge and experience from when I started. And I am ever so grateful to my mentor, Dr. Burdett, for helping me and being ever so patient because I would have never ever completed this garment if it wasn't for her wisdom. And of course, I also want to thank the ACRE program for granting me this opportunity. And that is it for my presentation. These are my sources, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe I'll see you, maybe I won't.